Elizabeth at Literary Princess. If you're new here, welcome. I am a fifth-year PhD candidate in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists. And as you might imagine, I love to read, and I also love to talk about the books that I am reading. So today I have my January 2024 wrap-up for you. I read 9 books, which is a great start to the month, and I feel like way more than I've been reading in February for the last several years. We've got a great mix of classics, fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, pretty much a little bit of everything. So let's jump in. First up, we have one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and I actually had it as an advanced reader copy from NetGalley on my Kindle. I've had this for months, but I was waiting for January 1st to read it. This is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. This is the second book in the Emily Wilde series. The first one, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, came out in January of 2023, and I absolutely adored it. It was one of my favorite books of the year. So I was so happy when the sequel turned out to be just as good. We get more of Emily and Wendell's relationship together, which I absolutely love. It is very reminiscent of Howl and Sophie in Diana Wynne Jones's Howl's Moving Castle. I just love it so much. This is set in a historical world where magic is real and there are fairies. Emily Wilde and her, what do we call him? Her lover? Her boyfriend? I don't know. They are both professors at Cambridge who study the Fae. I'm not going to say much because it would spoil the first book, and if you haven't read it, you should go read it. But absolutely fantastic, a great sequel, a perfect follow-up. So happy with it. 5 stars. I love starting my year off with a 5-star read. Excellent. The second book is one that I got from the library. This is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This came out in 2023, and I just thought it would be fun. It's a mystery thriller, and it focuses on a woman whose name I'm not remembering right now. I want to say it's Alex, but I feel like that's wrong. And she is a struggling writer, and she gets invited to this writing retreat held by a very famous woman writer, along with several other young women, including her ex-best friend, who she has slightly more than friendship feelings for. And when they get there, weird stuff starts happening. It's a sketchy place, and they're not entirely sure if they're actually safe. I enjoyed this, but I did have issues with the ending. I ultimately gave it 3.5 stars. Like, the start was great, and honestly, up until like the 75% mark, I was vibing with it. And then something happens at the end that I just felt really, like, the ending did not feel good at all. It felt like there was no point to the rest of the book because of how it ended. So I did have a lot of fun reading it. It was a very quick, enjoyable read. I would read more by Julia Bartz to check her out. I think this was her debut novel, but not my favorite. Didn't like the ending. Next up is a nonfiction that I actually read for school. This is 3 Guineas by Virginia Woolf. This is kind of a follow-up to A Room of One's Own, talking about women in society. And the main question that she's kind of trying to answer is, how can we prevent war? And in Virginia Woolf's mind, that is to educate women and allow them professions, etc. What I really read this for is because there is a part where she's talking about Margaret Oliphant, who is a Victorian woman writer that I'm looking at in my dissertation. And she criticizes Oliphant pretty heavily as having sold her brain and prostituted her culture for the sake of making money and supporting her family. So I was literally just here for that part, and none of my secondary readings that I have come across actually told me what chapter it was in. So I was like, well, I guess I'm just reading the whole book, which is fine because I enjoy Virginia Woolf. I also gave this 3.5 stars. I don't think it's as powerful as A Room of One's Own, but it's definitely an interesting read, especially considering this is while World War II is happening. So definitely worth the read, still not my favorite. So the fourth book that I read was one that I got for Christmas. This is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. It came out in 2023 and was one of my most anticipated releases of the year because I adored Kuang's babble. This follows a young woman named June who is a struggling writer. Lots of struggling writers this month. And she is living in the shadow of her considerably more famous friend, Athena Leo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I Googled the pronunciation, so I'm trying, but. And Athena seems very perfect. And she dies. This isn't a spoiler. She dies in front of June. It happens in like the first chapter or something. And she has left a finished draft of her latest novel that's about Chinese laborers during World War II. World War II? Nope, World War I. It was close. It was a world war. And she has not shown it to anybody, not her publishers, no one. And June knows this because she knows Athena's habits. So June decides she's going to take the manuscript and get it ready for publication and publish it under her own name. And this is her journey from there and kind of the rise and fall of Juniper Song, because she uses her middle name of Song, which is given to her by her hippie mother. She uses that as her name to publish under, because it makes it seem like she is an Asian person publishing this book about Chinese laborers. And this is really about the issues in the publishing world. This is a critique of the publishing world, and it's a harsh critique. Her critique of academia in Babel was really harsh too. About how publishers say they want own voices books, but then they only want one of a certain demographic, and then they're like, oh, well, we have our Asian author. And how they will help promote this white woman and try to make her seem like she is Asian so that her book will sell better. It is just about all these issues in publishing. The racism and just really kind of gross underbelly of it all. I did enjoy this. I gave it 4 stars. June is a hard character to deal with. She's not likable. She's annoying. She's so annoying. And she does not learn, ever. She never learns throughout the course of this book. And it's kind of infuriating. And that's the point, honestly. Like, every once in a while, I would find myself starting to feel bad for her. And then she'd just go and do something else. I was like, June, no. Oh my God, why are you terrible? I do know that this is kind of a book that people either really like or they really hate. There's a few people on YouTube whose opinions I respect so much who did not like this, and I can totally see why. I personally had a really good time. So if it sounds like it might be your thing, give it a go. It's funny, but in a very harsh way, I guess we'll call it. But yes, I gave it 4 stars. Next up is more nonfiction, and I got this from my university library. This is Graphs, Maps, Trees, Abstract Models for a Literary History by Franco Moretti. So Franco Moretti has kind of championed this idea of distant reading, which is kind of looking at, instead of close reading one text, looking at kind of trends in overall literature, or even within a single novel, and how characters interact with each other and who interacts with who. So I am doing a bit of distant reading in my dissertation. I am working with a database of Victorian fiction and kind of looking at how many books women published who are considered canonical, how many books non-canonical women have published, and then comparing that to their male counterparts. So I just wanted to read another of Moretti's books to kind of see how he handles things. This was fine, like not my favorite. It's nonfiction, like scholarly nonfiction. It's not always the most fun to read. It's very short. I think that the first chapter on graphs was the most interesting to me. The maps, I was like, meh. The trees were interesting too, but the graphs are really what I was there for. I gave this 3 stars. Next up is another library book. I have made it a goal to read at least 1 book a month from my public library, and I did 2 this month, so I'm off to a great start for my goals. This is Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. I actually had an arc of this, but the formatting was so screwed up on my Kindle that I was like, I cannot deal with this at all. I will get it from the library when they have it. And they did, and I had a great time. So this is, it's not historical fiction because it's as if King Arthur had been a real person, but it's not really fantasy either because there's no magic. So I don't really know what you'd call this other than it's a young adult romance. This takes place, like, I think at least a few centuries after King Arthur. So the Gwen and Art of the title are not King Arthur and Queen Guinevere. Instead, they are Princess Gwendolen, who is the daughter of the King of England, and Arthur, I don't remember his last name. It doesn't say in the summary, but he is a descendant of King Arthur. Now, they have been engaged since they were children, but they don't like each other at all. There is a tournament happening in Camelot. Arthur has been sent to spend time with Gwen so that they can get to know each other a bit before they get married. And they each discover about each other that they are gay. Arthur likes boys, Gwen likes girls. And so they're like, we can use this. So they pretend to be courting while they are actually pursuing their other interests. This is so much fun. I picked this up because I watched the show from the BBC, Merlin, when I was a teenager, and I kind of got back into it recently. And I was like, I just want something fun and goofy with the feel of Merlin. And I was like, let's give this a try. It's not the exact same, but it's definitely the similar goofy kind of faux historical setting. It's been compared to A Knight's Tale. Great movie, need to rewatch that. And this kind of did scratch my little itch for kind of goofy Arthuriana type stuff. I did have a little bit of issue right toward the end. The tone kind of changes. Like, this is all very lighthearted and funny until the very end, and some serious stuff starts happening, and it just feels a bit like whiplash. However, I did really enjoy this. I gave it 4 stars. Next book was supposed to be the first read for my feature Fairy Tale Friday, where I read fairy tale retellings and talk about them on a Friday. This isn't a fairy tale retelling. This is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. I had thought based on the title, and I think somebody somewhere said that it was a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. No, it's not. This is drawing on Hungarian history, Jewish folklore. It's fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It's just not a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood at all. This follows Avike, who is the one girl in her pagan village who does not have magic. And when the Woodsman, who are a kind of holy order knight type thing for the king, come to take their seer, their one seer that they have from the village, Avike's people disguise her as the seer and send her off. This results in Avike having to travel with Gaspar, who is one of the woodsmen and is actually the prince and rightful heir to the throne. However, he is kind of being ousted by his half-brother, who is illegitimate, but who has much more radical ideas and wants to eliminate all the pagans. This is a great book. I loved it. I did think that the beginning was kind of slow. We spend a lot of time traveling from place to place, and it's like we get to a new place, we have a crisis where they almost die, it's resolved, and then they move on to the next place. That kind of stopped by the halfway point when they got back to the capital city, and from there things really started to pick up. It's a fascinating world. As I said, it's drawing on Hungarian history. There are kind of direct parallels with certain people and certain saints. And then there is the Yahuli people, who are Jewish people. Like, they even have the story of Esther in here. We see a lot of the mistreatment that they go through, as well as the mistreatment the pagan people go through. But the pagan people are also prejudiced against the Yahuli people. So it's very interesting dynamics. I really enjoyed it. I was very thankful for the pronunciation guide at the back because I had no idea how to pronounce anything. And there is a very interesting essay at the back of my copy called, if I can find it, Imagined Nation States, the Danger of Depoliticizing Eastern European Fantasy, which I thought was a great read, and talking about why there needs to be these political and religious and cultural aspects in fantasy based on based on Eastern European countries, and how it is really a disservice and not okay to erase that, which some books that take on a similar setting have done. So I highly recommend this. I gave it a 4-star. I think it's more like a 4.25 star, but I generally don't do quarter stars. I already do half stars, and I feel like quarter stars would just be too much. But it was like slightly above just a 4-star read. Definitely worth it. I love Ava Reed's writing. I'm very excited to get to A Study in Drowning soon. Next up, we have my read for the George Eliot Project, which is where I am reading George Eliot's fiction in publication order. For January, it was Felix, Holt, the Radical. I have a whole video on this, so I'm not going to say too much about it, but I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars as well, but I think, again, it's like more of that like 4.25 that I don't do. It's not quite 5.5, but it's like a little up from 4 stars. I don't want to incorporate quarter ratings though. I feel like my spreadsheet that I have all my books in is already enough with the half ratings. I don't want to do the quarter ratings too. The issues of being a bookworm. It's really not that big of a deal. Anyway, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought this was going to be too political for me to be interested in. It's really not about the politics. The politics is just kind of the backdrop. This is a story about inheritance and a woman named Esther Leon having to choose between 2 men that symbolize different things. One who symbolizes morality but is poor, and one who symbolizes wealth and status, but is kind of less morally great. So yeah, I would say if you're a George Eliot fan, definitely check this out. I feel like this one is never talked about and it deserves to be talked about more. And then right on the last day of January, I snuck in one more book. This is The Night Dance by Suzanne Wen. And yes, I did pick this up because I was like, The Wolf and the Woodsman wasn't a fairy tale retelling. And I wanted to read a fairy tale retelling. This is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, and it also mixes it with Arthurian legend, which I think I knew in the back of my head, but I'd kind of forgotten about it. So I was really excited because, of course, I've been into Merlin again. I was like, yes, more Arthurian legend, yay. I'm not going to say a whole lot about this because I am going to have a whole Fairy Tale Friday video on it, but it follows a princess, Rowena, who has been stuck in her father's castle for years. Her and her 11 sisters, she's the 12th, are not allowed out, but she finds a way and she falls in love with a knight. And lots of other stuff happens. I ultimately gave this 3 stars. There were things that I really disliked about it. One of the biggest problems with the 12 Dancing Princesses and trying to retell it is that 12 princesses is literally a ridiculous amount of characters to try to develop. And as you can see, this is not very long. So I thought the character development was very sparse. There's definitely insta-love. There's something weird going on with with the love interest for one of the other sisters that I just was not appreciative of. But overall, I did have a lot of fun and I loved joining the fairy tale with Arthurian legend. So 3 stars. Quick, easy read. Read it in 2 evenings. Lots of fun. So that is my January wrap up. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you read any of these? What did you think? What did you read in the month of January? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you can see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.